How's it going, everybody? This is going to be a really this video. I don't know how this is going to go. I have a lot to share. It is pretty personal to me. A little bit about my life, my journey, what brought me to where I am right now. It's 2:22 in the morning right now. I'll talk more in a little bit. That's somewhat profound to me, and I'll explain. So, not too long ago, say maybe 2-3 years ago, not even that, a year ago, maybe, I was in such a deeply dark place that I considered ending my life at least 2 or 3 times a week. There was really no reason for me to feel that way other than the fact that I was filled with so much anger, disappointment in myself. I hate myself more than anybody could hate anything. And that led me to hate the world. I hated life. I was as unhappy as I could be. And I've been on this journey, a slow but sure journey out of that dark place. I'd like to talk about some of the things that brought me out of that, because this video will probably be seen by anybody, and that's fine. That's perfectly fine. But if it helps even one person, it will be totally worth it. So just to kind of where I had a job that I absolutely despised. I liked the work of the job, but I hated what was required. I hated the negativity that I was surrounded by. I was surrounded by people who were negative about everything. They were competitive. They would be your friend to your face and then throw you under the bus to make them better in an instant. And being in that environment, I was there for 15 or so years. It was in construction, actually, and I loved to build things. I was a commercial glazer. We worked mostly with aluminum, and I really loved the work. I felt like I was good at it. I felt like I knew what I was doing. And, after 15 years, I was super comfortable with the work. But what I couldn't stand was being in a position of no control whatsoever. It wasn't up to me when I got to work, what I did when I got there. None of that was up. I've come to find out I'm a bit of a control freak. I don't do well under somebody else's thumb. I just don't. I have a different thinking than your average person, and I always have. A lot of that comes from my past. I had a really just sort of a chaotic childhood. A lot of had it so much worse than me, and I don't want to pretend even for a second that I've had the worst life I haven't. Not by a long shot. But the way I felt about my life, I may as well have. I was miserable. I hated myself. I hated everything around me. I hated the way the world worked. I hated the way, that we're sort of driven money in this world, and those that have money have the power, and we would sort of have to succumb to their will. Drove me nuts. Totally crazy. And some strange things happened. Let me back up for a second. While they're doing construction, and like I said, I loved the work, but the environment was trash. It was so rough. You would have to fight for every bit of respect that you could get. And when you got a little bit of respect, there was somebody waiting to tear you down every single time. And that was what my adult had been. I started doing construction at 17. By 32 years old, I was a drug addict. I had 3 DUIs. I I would use substances just to escape. Just because when you're drunk, you don't care. And like your life is trash, you want to not care. You're desperate to not care. The amount of shame that I felt from doing drugs was only outweighed by how terrible I felt when I wasn't on drugs, because when I was sober, that's when I had to look at my life and look at decisions and look at who I was for what it really was. And I felt as though I just kind of pissed everything away. But I also felt at the same time that there wasn't much to piss away. So who cares, right? That's where I was at. I had a family that loved me. Like I said, my childhood was rough, but the time I became an adult, I started to perpetuate the chaos on my. I didn't feel comfortable around people who live normal life. I felt almost like they didn't really know what was going on, because if they did, they'd be pissed off too. And if they're not pissed off, it's because they're ignorant. That's how I felt. And so when I say drugs, I don't mean pot. I don't feel like there's really anything wrong with that. Having a drink now and then, nothing wrong with that, unless you're an alcoholic like me. I became an alcoholic, started drinking at 14, started smoking pot at 14. By the time I was mid 20s, man, that's all I did. That's all I did. That's all I cared about. I work, and the money I earned from going to work was there so that I could keep myself loaded, so that I didn't have to look at who I was. I didn't have to look at what my life was. I could just be in this sort of state. And I lived that way for about 15, maybe even 20, no, longer than that. It was probably about 25 years. If I started at 14, by the time I was 29, I hadn't stopped. I got my last DUI at 32 years. I'm 38 now. I was just balls deep in life. All of my friends were drug addicts. That was what motivated us. And I'll tell you, there is nobody that is more motivated and more resourceful than a drug addict who doesn't have drugs. I'm the best liar you've ever seen. I could manipulate people. I could get things from them, because it's a skill to develop, because it's the way of your life. Imagine being as hungry as you've ever been, and somebody else has food. Not food. You haven't eaten in days. You're close to starving, and somebody else has food. What would you do to get your hands on food? That's what addiction is like. It makes it so your entire life revolves around that. And you get so desperate for that feeling, you give up everything. I mean, everything. It got to such a bad point that my wife eventually packed up the kids, went to her mom's. And that was one of the most devastating things that could ever happen to a person. I didn't feel like I had any reason for living other than to live for my kids, and they were being taken from me. And I had to really take a good look at myself. And it's hard, man. When you hate yourself, when you hate the decisions you've made, you hate the actions you've taken, the last thing you want to do is look into that. It is the hardest thing to do, to face the reality that the actions you've decided to take have ruined your life. That's where I was. That's where I'd gotten my life. That's just kind of what happens when you start, you have a childhood that's a little rough, you want to escape, you start using drugs as a teenager, you don't learn how to with that shit. You live by this, by the CDs. What, like, you just move on from one hit to the next. There's a lot of people who can do a drug and don't like it. That wasn't me. I have addiction in my past. My dad was a crack. My older brother became a crackhead. Guess what? I became a damn crackhead. And I would use it a few times a week. And I wanted to tell myself, I use it every day. I don't need it. I'm I'm not a fucking kid. But most normal people would say, dude, if you're using crack 2 or 3 a week, you're a fucking crackhead. And I didn't want to believe it because I wanted to have that pride of saying I was somebody that mattered. I wasn't a piece of trash. I wasn't worthless. And all the while, I was doing everything in my power to make me feel more worthless and make me feel like a bigger piece of trash. But it was a snowball effect because the more I did that, the more I would need that escape. And, I would tell people close to me, look, man, I need help. $50. I'm fucked. I don't have gas money. I can't get to work. And I would manipulate them and they would say, you know what, I love you, so let me help you out. I didn't put gas in my car. I didn't make sure I could work. I went and bought drugs. And there's a lot of people in that position. I was just miserable. Absolutely miserable. And I got to the point I felt as though if I took my own life, it would be a gift to my. That's where I was at. I felt like such a piece of trash. If I had killed myself, my family would be better off. And mix that with the fact that I didn't want to do it. And by it, I mean life. I just didn't want to do it anymore. I was, but some things happened that brought me to a place that is so far from that just so incredibly grateful that I made it there. So being in that state I was, hating my job, hating getting up every day. I just wanted to be asleep all the time. I escaped because when I was asleep, the real world didn't exist. And I didn't want the real world to exist. I just wanted it to go away. Whatever I could do to make real go away. I was desperate for that. And one day I saw, one of those things many people have seen where, for small investment, we'll teach you how to, do this new career and you'll make tons of money. You make tons of money. And I was like, look, I am so miserable. I have to get out of this place that I'm in. So I used the equity I had in my house that I only had because my in-laws were good enough to get a deposit my wife and I needed. And we had lived there for a few years, so we had some equity. Pulled it out so I could go and do this schooling. And I started to study. Well, 2 years later, I have a business. From the outside, those know I'm not making any money would assume I'm successful. You would think a business owner's, well, hey, you got it all going on. You're bringing in tons of money. You must be doing great. That's what people would tell me. Little did they know I was struggling every step of the way, not making a dime. Every time that something would seem like it was going my way, I would get in my own way and up every single time. But I kept trying. And then I kept, trying to get better at it because I really wanted to succeed. I wanted to make sure that it happened. I wanted to make sure that proved to my family that I was worth more than what it seemed, that I could be successful, that I could make it because they had suffered too on my behalf. I borrowed. My in-laws were paying my rent for quite some time, and every time they did that, I felt worse. So anyway, I jumped into this other new career and I started coming from construction. I would maybe use a computer 2 or 3 times a year. I'd be on my phone a lot, emails or banking from my phone that, on the rare occasions that they're necessary. But I didn't really know how to use a computer. So it was a steep learning curve to move into a career that is 100 on the computer. I was not good at it. Not at all. I wanted to put the effort in because I wanted to make it work. So I kept trying. I kept trying. I learned. I got better, but I couldn't make it work. I wasn't making any damn money. All the while, my was having to work harder to support us because I'm not making money. God, she's got 2 jobs and she's the one supporting us. I sat at home trying to make my business work. All that did was make me feel worse. It made me feel like I had thrown away my entire construction career for something that brought me no money. And I got into even deeper depression and making no money. It was a hit every time, like a bigger blow to finances every time I escaped. But I didn't really feel any better. In some cases, I felt better because I didn't have to go and be in a negative environment. But I was trying to make something on my own, thinking I was resourceful. I was smart enough to make something happen, and it didn't pan out. And I was just distraught. I didn't know what. I mean, I've had my depression diagnosis. I've had anxiety issues, but a lot of that just came from the life I lived. There wasn't much happiness to go around. Throughout my entire childhood, I've been conditioned to believe that if I wasn't of value to my family, that I didn't deserve their love. and I felt unloved. And I loved myself less than any of them could have because I know my family loves me. They do. Despite what I've done, despite where I've been, they love me. I hated myself. But to find out this jump from where I was or to where where I came to, I didn't realize at that time that I was doing exactly what I had to be doing because what I was doing was trying to find happiness. I was trying to find a way out of misery, out of the hatred, out of the negativity. But I felt like a failure either way. And I started, maybe I'm selfish because I'm trying to find something that makes me happy, but I need to provide for my family. And I was the kind of person who always put myself first. I would always put other feelings first. And I felt that that was what I needed to do. That was how I showed people that I was valuable. I was their giving tree. I was their whipping boy. That's that became my persona. Let me take the pain of you. That's what it was. But it was because I didn't care about myself. I didn't care if I felt miserable because that's what the conditioning did to me. I'm convinced that that's what life was. Misery. What my old roommate and I used to say, this little motto, instead of saying, shit happens, our motto was life sucks and then you die. And I believed it. I didn't know why I was put on earth, but I was pissed that I was put there. Here, whatever. I couldn't see a keep going. But little by little, I came across some things that brought me out of it. I am in a completely different place now. I've never been happier in my life than I am right now. Even though I don't make it, I ain't worth shit. I'm in debt, but I don't care. I don't give a fuck. I'm happy anyway. I have my wife and I are better than we've ever been. The relationship I have with my kids is better than it's been because I put those things that tortured me aside. I ended up in rehab after my wife took the kids. She said, "Look, man, if I'm coming back, you're going to rehab. Fine, I'll do whatever the fuck you want. Bring my kids back. Because without you guys, I genuinely have no reason to be alive." So I went to rehab. I was there for almost a month, 28-ish days. And that really, it was what I needed just to separate myself from where I was. And when I came out, I wasn't clean forever. Fuck no. I'd relapse. I'd start feeling like a piece of shit again and go and try to do drugs because I wanted to escape. Then right, I'd feel even worse than I did before because the guilt and shame came back. But I was lucky to sort of fall into something that changed everything for me, that got me to that place of misery and despair to a place where I'm excited for the future. I don't dread waking up anymore. Alone is a huge step in the right direction. because I don't know how many years it was that I hated myself. That was just the condition that I put myself in. Comfortable there. I was comfortable just immersed in anger and immersed in hate and just feeling like every around me was an obstacle. They wanted to control me. They told me what to do, and that shit pissed me off. I didn't want to be told what to do. I didn't want anybody trying to tell me that they understood, because they didn't fucking understand. But I was to keep myself clean. I'd put together 3 weeks and then fuck up, and then I'd put together 6 weeks and then I'd fuck up, and then I might hit 2 months and then I'd fuck up. But little by little, that time grew. Time in between my fuck ups grew. And I fell into something that, like I said, it completely changed my life. And that's more or less what this video is about. If one person sees a video and they can take themselves from where they are, if they were in a position to where I was, and they can get themselves to where I am now or better, hopefully, then it's worth it. Worth sharing all this embarrassing shit. Worth sharing all my shame, my despair. Because I have very little to gain from this. I don't expect a viral video. I don't expect hundreds or thousands or millions of people to see this. No, maybe a couple dozen if I'm lucky. But that's okay. If 2 or 3 people out of that few dozen are helped, then it's all worth it. It's worth any ridicule that comes, because it'll come, and that's fine. Because I'm at a place I genuinely don't care what other people think. My priorities are in order. I care about what matters, which is not the outside world. They don't fucking matter. It doesn't matter what people think of you. I cannot stress that enough. Whatever belief a person has about you, that's their own shit. It really has to do with you. Even if they're telling you that it's your actions that's wrong, it's still their beliefs. They've never seen the world through you. They don't know what it's like to be you. They have no fucking idea. Even if you were in the same place, raised the exact same way, doesn't mean they know what it's like to be you. We're not all the same. Our brains work differently. Our lives are different. We think differently. We are not the same as everyone else. Each individual is exactly that, an individual person. One thing that people take from this video is stop kicking your own ass for who you are. Because in a lot of ways, you're exactly where you need to be. If life sucks, learn from it. Grow. Do everything you can to figure out what the fuck it makes you feel the way you feel. Because all we have, the outside world, it's not ours. It's all an illusion. All we have is the mind. And even that, in my opinion, can get in the way. Because we're all trying to figure out a way to get by in this world. We're trying to figure out a way to make some money, figure out a way to bring that person into your life up. And you try to do it and you fail and you feel like it's because you're worthless. You've done something wrong. You're not that guy. You're not that girl. You're not that person. But that's the outside world. That's their opinion. That's the society they set up. I've never met a person that chose to be born in the society they're in. Nobody does. You're born into the system you're born in. And if the system is fucked, your life might be fucked. I was born in 1986. People had it good when I was born. They may have had a better, even better 20 years before that. But things were pretty for a lot of folks back in the 80s. And it's ticked down little by little. It's gotten worse and worse. You know, I'll talk about Ronald Reagan in another video. This isn't that. That's not what this one's about. Long story short, a series of events happened that led me to find BASHAR. BASHAR, of course, will recognize the name and understand where I'm going with this, but most people, the 8 to 12 people that will see this video over the next whatever, it changed fucking life. It is night and day. I used to make $5,000 a month and hated my life. I hated myself. I haven't made more grand in the last 2 years, and I'm happier than I've been because I've changed my beliefs. I've gotten my priorities straight. I've decided what it really is and that's just to be happy. And if you're in a shit position and life is kicking your ass, you very much feel like that's not up to you. You don't get to decide whether or not you're happy. We'll come to what you do. And that's really what changed my life. And there's many other people that I need, that I could thank for, because it wasn't just all of a sudden I found BASHAR. No, it was a series of events, a series of things that I, content I would consume that brought me to that. And it has made my life exponentially better. I'm not depressed. I mean, don't get me, I still take my antidepressants. I've got issues. There's no in that. Maybe I'll get to a point one day where I'm not taking a handful of meds at night and another handful of meds every morning. But it used to be that I would do still want to end my life. I'm not there anymore. I now to keep myself positive. Because if I don't take them, it's impossible for me to stay positive. But luckily, when I am medicated, I can stay positive. I've got bill collectors coming up in woodwork, coming after me for money. I don't give a fuck. Care. They can send me to collections. My credit can be ruined. I don't give a fuck. Because I don't believe it's important anymore. That's not what's important to me. What's important to me is that my family is healthy, fed, and safe. And they are. End of story. I may not know where my next meal's coming from, but I know it will be there. I know I'm not going to go hungry. I know I'm not going to go without. And that's because belief systems have changed. I no longer judge myself based on where others are. That's the worst thing you can do to yourself. And that's where everybody is now. In this age of social media, people put on a front and they try to make others believe that they're at a place that they're not. That can't be how you live your life. You can't live your life for likes because at the end of the day, none of that shit matters. What other people believe about you doesn't fucking matter. People can hate you. People can think you're the biggest piece of shit on the planet. Who cares? That is their incorrect opinion. Somebody they don't understand. So stop on your own ass about the mistakes you've made in the past. They aren't mistakes. They taught you what you need to know to continue. Whatever it may be. Now, I won't go so far as to say that it's a child. Deal with it. No, no. That's still something that I feel is beyond the pale. If one of my children, I don't know what the fuck I would do. My life would be just over. I couldn't handle that. And I'm not about to tell people who have gone through that, my mother included, that she needs to get over it. I lost my brother, my mom lost her son. Way easier on me than it is on her. And I felt guilt for a long time about that because me and him had an awful relationship. I was born second. He was my older brother. He was much bigger than me. Not just because he was 2 years older than me, but he was a much bigger person than me. And he would kick my ass up and down the house my entire life. He was blur, he would black out. And from what the doctor said, he had some kind of issue where he would black out and become violent and not stop until he sees red, which is blood. And that was me. I was that punching bag. And I used to pray to God he died. And then he did. And that hurt. I felt like I was responsible. Now, the only reason that doesn't get anymore is because I strongly believe those who have passed know the truth. And they know that all of this shit they're doing every day is just a fucking game. It really doesn't matter. This life we live is a blink of an eye compared to who we really are. We all live forever. Forever. Death is not the end, it's a transition. When we were born, we transitioned into this place. When we die, we'll transition out. We don't know that because when we chose to blame, we chose to forget. And most of us never remember. I was lucky enough that I went to a path where I can start to remember. And I've just started this journey. It's, maybe 18 months, 2 years. But from where I was, I was raised in a Christian church. I hate it. The church and everyone in it. And then there was a time where I spent as an atheist because I was like, there's no way that a God could exist and leave us here to suffer the way we do. And I had a decent life compared to a lot of people. There are people who have had much worse. I don't know how they do it. They must be stronger than I am. And I hope one day to get to a point where I'm as strong as they are. People who have genuinely had shit lives and they're able to take it on the chin and keep going. I don't know how they do it. I was too weak to do that. But I found some things to give me. And like I said, there's many different people, many different lessons that I've learned. But there's thing that made a difference more than the things I've learned from Daryl, Anka, and BASHAR. So I'd like to go into that to share BASHAR, share some of his wisdom. But I will say, little disclaimer beforehand, 90% of people who hear what I'm about to say are going to say I'm fucking nuts. They're going to say I'm a total jackass for believing this. I'm a moron. I believe in magic and fairy tales and magic. Like, that's what a lot of people are going to think. That's what I thought. I thought it was a bunch of bullshit. But I started listening. Come to find out, at least from my position, I think this guy knows what the fuck he's talking about. If he didn't, how could it change life? I understand ignorance is bliss, and say that I'm falling into a state of ignorance, and that's why I'm more happy. That's not it. As science progresses, science is getting closer and closer and closer to proving that we've been wrong for thousands of years. Magic isn't something just for stories. Magic is the natural order of things. We've forgotten that. And instead of using the gifts we've been given, we try to force it through action, through unguided action. We don't know what the fuck's going on. None of us do. We pretend we do. And we try to force our lives into a position where we're happy. We tell ourselves that once we get to this point, we'll be happy. And it's okay that we're miserable in the meantime because we haven't gotten there yet. And that's where I was. But I don't believe that anymore. I believe that is a choice. And the circumstances you live in, as they may be, you can choose to look at it as a, and that maybe things suck right now. Maybe they do. Maybe life is trash for you right now. In the future, how do you know that that's not going to be a valuable lesson? You don't. You're able to get to that point and sit back and look at the magic that life really is. You're not all that. At this point, I still don't know. I've seen little fractions of the magic, little tiny tidbits of them, but it's enough. It's enough to show me that I'm going in the right direction. And I want others to have that. So I've been joking for nearly 45 minutes. That was not what I was planning on doing, but hopefully it has helped at least one person. Even if it's just so they know they're not alone. They don't have to stay where they are. They don't. You've got this. If life sucks right now, well, guess what? It's making you stronger than the person next to you whose life doesn't suck. And they may never understand. They may never know what this life is really about because they haven't been through the hardship that forces them into a position where they're desperate to look for anything to make them happier. That's the point I had to get to. Desperate. My two choices were find something to make me happier or blow my off. And the second option seemed like the more viable one. but I was scared. Honestly, I didn't want to face the reality that maybe if I did that, my miserable life would be over, and then what did I even live for? So I didn't do it. Just out of fear, just out of the unknown. I'd say the vast majority of it is because I didn't want kids. I didn't want to do that to them. Because my dad, he was kind of a piece of shit. Still loved him. Want bad things to happen to him. Still cared for him. That was my fucking dad. I didn't start having a relationship with him until I was 27 years old because he was off the hook on drugs for decades. He didn't give a fuck about me when I was a kid. That fucked with me. You know, I felt like my dad didn't care. My brother was beating us. You know, my mom always loved me, but she was working jobs supporting 5 kids on $6 an hour. She didn't have the bandwidth about my mental health. She was more concerned with making sure I had a roof over my head and my mouth. And she sacrificed the majority of her life to make sure that happened. And she succeeded. So all the props in the world to my mom. She's the strongest person I've ever met in my life. Anyway, on to what was supposed to be the whole point of this video. I want to introduce people who do not know anything about BASHAR to BASHAR. A little bit of background. There's a man by the name of Daryl Anka. His claim is that he has been channeling an extra-dimensional entity. We're in the third dimension or third density. He's from the fifth dimension or fifth density. And he reaches down from the fifth to pull us from the third up to the fourth. And we as humanity, we're getting there. There's going to be some in the way, but we're getting there. We finally tipped the scales. We have finally gotten to the point. People who are pushing for positivity and love and acceptance is beyond 50%. We've been running under that number for thousands of years. And we're finally getting there. And if this video can help somebody get there, then I've done my job. I've done what I have to do. I've helped one person. That's enough. I'm not on YouTube because I expect to be some, Mr. B. No, that ain't happening. And that's okay. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to share my experience in the hope that those who are helped by it. So anyway, I'll try my damnedest not to get sidetracked. So, Daryl channels BASHAR, being a fifth dimensional entity. We've all been raised to believe that we live in this universe and we are alone in this universe. Either that or there are ETs that live hundreds of light years away and have somehow figured out to travel that distance through the vacuum of space to come here and just watch. That's where I was for a long time. That's what I believe. The evidence that something else is happening is too great. Way that it's just us. And if it is, then the government has some fucking explaining to do. Because there is weird shit that happens on this planet every fucking day that cannot be explained by science, by math, physics, I suppose. They can't explain it. So it's either they don't know don't want to tell us. I think it's a little bit of both, personally. But the belief that different dimensions, different densities exist. And one of the best ways to think about it is that you can take film strip, or maybe even for those that are as old as me, the overhead projectors you'd see it's they could lay down a clear thing with some writing on it, and all you'd see is the writing. Down another thing on top of it and add to it without taking other. I think it's something like that. We exist on these slides, and there are others who exist on these other slides. That's one of the many things I've learned from Daryl and BASHAR. According to him, linear time does not exist. We are not slowly progressing through a timeline. There is a past and a future. Everything that has ever existed exists right now. But we are flashing through realities so quickly, literally billions of times per second. And so our perception is that the movie of our is playing in a linear fashion, cause and effect, one thing to another, to another, to another, throughout our whole lives. In reality, we're jumping from frame to frame to frame to frame, just like a movie. If you pull out the film strip from a movie, there's nothing moving. It's one picture after another, and it goes by so fast that our perception is that of a linear time